So, in making this piece, I will use the point for the stem and then a bubble for the top of the stem. I'll spin the foot out, I'll open the foot out off of the bottom of the stem. So that'll be the only point I use is on the top of the stem. Then I'll hold on to the stem of the goblet to open up the goblet cup. And I'll make blow the bubbles for the cup and feet separately and attach them. So basically, I create the avolio while I blow the bubble and connect the two halves of the avolios.
Do you always wear medium to standard, or do you prefer heavy on or
Medium to standard.
for sleeves and everything?
Yep.
So you get a perfectly full point for this piece. You need a point that's like perfectly full the first time.
No, you can definitely go back in and straighten everything up. I mean, it's pulling points straight all the time is kind of hard. Knowing how to go back and straighten points is pretty easy. Okay. Now this is going to be a hollow stem closed off. So what I have to do is set up basically like the same thing as a back restriction in the top of it. So I'll have point, bubble, here's the point coming down. I'll set it up by aiming the heat in that one spot, like a bat restriction, to where it creates a nice even hourglass shape in there, and that'll let me cut it and seal it off right there at that thickest spot. Pull out that shoulder. I use the V
Okay. And then there's a bunch of tape.
to really set the shape in.
You might just watch this will get like yellow and then red. This green tape here.
The L marker is also really good.
Like that was like 2 minutes.
How long bring it down? How do we get it?
I need
No,
this for
not totally,
and I
but
have 15 in the office.
close.
Otherwise, I'll need for the workshop. It's kind of weird feedback right now. There we go. Yeah, but I don't know, you can, if he's doing something and you're standing here,
Zoom in there.
if you can, And then also we try to take pictures with our camera sometimes too.
Okay.
And that's pretty important stuff.
Okay, so now the top part of that bubble.
And, it should be pretty good.
So now I'm going to go down and straighten up the bubble on this shoulder, and that'll also give me a defined area to put a Maria in to give it a little bit more of a decorative element. Now this is where I've got to be a little bit more used to my L marver at home. I'm going to go straight to the V and the L and guide that down. Okay, now actually blow this bubble out a little bit. Push it together a little bit. It's got a little bit of a wobble to it, but only other glass modes spin glass. Okay, now I'm going to make Maria. Now, this will be the top of the stem and come down toward the bottom. So I got to determine at this point how long I want the stem to be. So I want it long enough that I can hold on to it. So I'll say it's probably right around in that area. So I'm going to close that side off. I need to open this side up. Gather down a nice, stable, at least a quarter inch or so of glass. Maybe marver it out if it gets crooked. Never hurts to chill the sides up. I'm going to paddle it back into a diamond shape. So I heat only the front of that little gather. And the heat is basically bouncing off of the paddle and heating the front of that. And that pushes it into a nice diamond shape. What that does for me is that allows the Avolio that I put on there to connect to a broader area. So I'll go back and maybe polish it up a little bit back behind the point if it devitrified any. Oh, we didn't make our white.
You want one? I got one.
What's that?
I'll hold it for your points.
That works.
This one.
Oh, can I get a 6 mil rod? Is that behind me?
Yes, behind right here. Okay.
I got it. So I don't really worry too much about that stem part. It's been worked evenly. I mean, if you really look at it, it's just a bubble that has been kind of softened into shape and not really even been blown out dramatically. So there's really nothing on that that scares me as far as stress goes. This white, this is the Oro Sticks white, the little square bars, and I think it works best if it gets mixed down at least once. So even though this is just one little rod that I'm messing with here, it'll benefit from at least one repull.
So when you stack your stuff together, do you go through all this like repull all the color down?
No, not for a stick stack. Only like stuff that's going to be exposed to the surface. Like blowouts and, but mainly blowouts, or if I'm sculpting with it.
Okay, I just don't know if that.
If it's going to be in a stick stack, I mean, if it's a color that has a lot of air in it, it will affect your stick stack, but I kind of avoid those for stick stacks. I will just mix them down and do different stuff with them.
What color is that red right there?
That is Monka's Carmen Red. I think that's what it's called. I don't know, I haven't played with it before.
What do you usually use at home?
Whatever I can get the cheapest. Honestly, that's why I found that some of the reds, like if you get an odd or second of a cadmium color, that it might really suck. But sometimes if you put them inside a tube, like basically do a solid stick stack and mix that up, then sometimes they're a little bit better to work with. But I wouldn't go through the trouble of mixing it up just to pull it out and then go back and stick stack it. Okay, so now I'm going to add my Evolio. I do my Evolios like a quarter at a time. And so it would be, say here's the stem coming down. I'll do a gather on here, and this will be of the white, and paddle that back. So that will be 1/4 of the Evolio, and then I do a gather on the end of it, and kind of round that out. Well, actually, rather than letting it round out too much, I'll drag it out some, so that provides me with a little taper here. And then I'll cut that off, pull a little bit of the excess off. And so that will be half of my Evolio. I always make the next piece with the same kind of setup, and then I join them in the middle.
So it's going to end up being like 3 Marias or 1 Maria of the Evolio.
The Evolio will be like an hourglass shape. So it'll be like a Maria, a taper into another Maria. And I always set that on the Maria shape from the stem. So like that paddle diamond shape. Now for me, doing it this way gives me the opportunity to make sure that I get the glass all the way fused to the color all the way fused to the clear in this case. Sometimes if you just take a rod and kind of put it on the end and hope you get it really well fused, you just, for me, I can't, I get the acute angles, and I get, maybe I'll even catch air bubbles in the way that it'll fold over, or like the rod will fold over into the piece that you're attaching it to. And I found to get around that, if I just put a little gather on there and begin to let it melt all the way in, when I go back and paddle it a little bit, it widens it out, and it just continues that footprint of the heat that was put down from the gather growing into it. Straighten it up from the back if I need to. Okay, and here comes the second part. And that one I just kind of push on there, and then I pull that one back and zip it up. Use my marker. Just straighten it up a little bit. Okay, now it's time for foot. Okay. Now while that point cools off a little bit, I will show you the way I set this bubble up. So I will have come down to the point. I'll blow bubble and then cut off one of the points and gather that nipple down and paddle that into that same diamond shape. I will put honey on it and I'll open it up, probably blowing it out. I mean, and I say probably because I kind of waver back and forth sometimes between using the diamond shears and knocking a piece off or blowing it out, depending on what the exact situation calls for. But I like, for speed, to be able to flame cut them a lot of times. They come out a little bit cleaner. So to get everything set up to flame cut cleanly and to get it to spin out evenly, you need a thicker wall here in the back, and then let that get to be a little bit thinner in the front. So when you flame cut it and apply your heat in the middle of the bubble, this thinner stuff will maybe gather down a little bit, maybe get a little bit closer in wall thickness to this. And this will stay stable back here and won't be flopping around. So the heat hits that, this thickens up, centrifugal force slowly starts to open it up, and then I aim the flame dead in the front of this piece, and the deflection of heat and the deflection of the flame up against the back of the shoulder will just spin it out flat. And all of that's done after these two pieces are attached.
You put the lip wrap on this?
Yeah, that's right, I was gonna do that. I'll flame cut it and then put the lip wrap on it. So, gonna start here by softening this bubble basically that's already set up in here. Giving it a little bit of a puff and pushing it together. A little bit. One more time. Okay. I'm going to open up the other side. Aiming the heat on the top of this bubble. That's letting the top of this gather down and thicken up to give me that gradation from thick back at the top of the foot to thinner down by the lip. And that's also giving me a spot to define the end of the top of the foot. So now I can cut the point off and gather down all of the hollow to that point that I cut in with the V. Okay, now with the heat aimed on the very front of that spot that's gathered down. Paddle in my V shape. What do you guys mostly work on, torch-wise?
Marine style, marbles.
You know, you do what kind of choice they work on, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
like what brand?
GTZ.
You're all on miners, right? You guys are all on miners, right?
Nice.
National school. Mostly making bats and stuff.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with nationals. I actually have one as a hand torch next to me. Obviously not here, but at home. I love it.
You're all on GTTs though. You all have Mirages or Deltas, right? Anyone who doesn't have a Mirage or Delta?
Okay. Cool. Okay, so here comes the bottom of the Volio. And then the gather to the top of it. Lid shape. Okay, sometimes when putting the two half Volios together, don't stick them together too soon, it helps to have one a little bit hotter and the other one a little bit cooler so you can push the hotter shape into the cooler shape. And then if you allow it to cool and go back and reheat it to shape it a little bit, then you're a little bit closer to your end of desired shape. So this piece is a little bit hotter, a little bit cooler. Excuse me. So other than that little Maria in there, I'm closer to the final shape than maybe what I would have been if I had both pieces.
Does it matter which one you keep hotter and cooler?
Yeah, if you keep the larger part a little bit cooler, you can guide the hotter stuff into that larger.
So were they two cones, or did you have your one cone, which is the smaller and the right, to like a more of a round and flat, which is top part of
Yeah, if you can have like rounded cones for each of them, it works best. I mean, if you have them the same shape. So there you can see where it's not on center, or where the Maria is not on center for the Evolio, but the whole rest of the bubble is. So, you know, while you want to get it as close as you can, if the shape is there and everything's on center, I'm going to go ahead and roll with that, and the little bit it's off on one side is not going to bother me too much. So if I flame cut these, I put my blow hose on, and we'll do the other kind of cut too. I mean, at least 5 or 6 times this weekend. So, small flame, heating in one spot. Pull it out of the flame, I blow and pull. Back into the flame, blow, pop, and spin. Okay. I'm going to let that bead down just a little bit and trim underneath that bead. Stop when it starts to give me a little bit of crunchy. Cut it off so it doesn't tag. Just a little bit of heat. Paddle it flat. Flat and round is very important to something opening up flat and round. So I can let that glass gather maybe just a little bit to flatten and round out. And this is all in preparation for lip wrap. Clean up the end of the white. Right around the edge. Just gonna walk that one. Now where it started and stopped sometimes leaves a little spot where it's not touching on the lip. So I go back and get it just warm enough that I can grab it with that rod and just move it down just a little bit. Now when I go back and trim the top of this bleb off, it's going to be sticking on bottom and fairly even with the rest of the top. paddle that in, round and flat, opens up round and flat. That lip wrap's kind of thick, but you kind of need to be thick to show up on the clear. And now I'm heating back in the middle of this bubble. The top part that's a little bit thicker is not going to move. The front's a little bit hotter now. It's opening up just a little bit. One more paddle, flat. Spin a little bit faster and heat down on the inside.
All right, everyone got it?
No problem.
Now if you spin it out right, it will not really be, it cannot get any flatter. If you spin it out and move up so the edge of the foot can roll back, then sometimes you will get a foot that doesn't really sit flat all the way around and will wobble. Then you got to go back and paddle them. But if you spin it out flat and don't kick the edges out, it should be flatter at that point than what you're ever really going to be able to get back to and paddle flat. Because inevitably, when paddling flat, you'll hit one side before the other. And it happens to me sometimes. You just fight and fight and fight with the damn thing to get it flat. So that's why I always wait before I hit it. I've got that urge to grab the paddle and hit it, make sure it's flat. But if I wait until it's cool and check it on the bench, then if it's a good spin, a good flare, then it's flat. You can see where that was the start-stop point of the lip wrap. It's a little uneven there, but it's round and flat enough for a demo. Preface everything with it is a demo. I'll do my best. Okay. Now I need to have enough white for another lip wrap and another Avoya. And that's not really enough. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up a little bit more so I've got it. One of the reasons I like these square rods of white is because I can rubber band them together pretty easily and they make a uniform shape.
Use some big rod.
Yeah, like 8 or 10.
There's 6 right there, I think there's 12.
That'll work.
How long do I need?
Now, I don't really need to rubber band these together. For the bigger ones I do, but it just makes it that much easier really to hold on to get it nice on the end of the rod. Okay. Now rather than really fighting with the rubber band or burning myself, just burn it off. Keep it warm back here because I didn't really stick it on there real hard, and the white is actually kind of susceptible to cracking a little bit back from where you seal it with something. So keeping it warm while I'm getting it clear, just as long as I don't get it too hot and where they start wobbling all over prevents it from cracking. hot enough, they're all going to move. Feeding it together. I hold my hands in both directions with my right hand up and left hand down, and then my left hand up and right hand down. So as I mix it, the glass runs in both directions. And that's keeping me from mixing in any of the clear and keeping it from like pulling out and getting narrow. Let's see, one air bubble that's starting to come to the surface. And if you just spin in opposite directions, kind of holding your hands at a 90-degree angle, that'll squeeze the air bubbles out, if any get in when you initially twist it up. As long as you keep both hands moving, you're not going to boil the glass any more than what you would just regularly spinning it. Okay, get all the air out. Couple air bubbles, but maybe mix it up a little bit more just so it's nice and even as I pull it out. I stall and wait for a second so the heat can even out in this gather. That thick spot in the middle is going to hold its heat longer. So if I pull slow, that'll pull out. That'll pull out a little more evenly. Kind of like chewing gum. The faster you pull it, it'll string out. Well, if you let the heat even out and a thick gather and pull it evenly, you can get a kind of even pull out of something that you would otherwise have kind of lumpy. Here's when I cut off the top point and make this all the way sealed. Pretty important here to heat in slowly. I don't want to add a lot of stress to the top of the bubble where it's going to have some heat and have the force of the air that has contracted trying to suck it in after it cools off. I'm aiming the heat on the top half of that hourglass shape. I want to let that top half begin to close down and get to the smallest diameter that's like right there in the middle. And then I'll pull it off and cut it basically right in the middle. So if it all happens right, the inside basically stays the same shape up to that very middle where then it's closed off. With a decent amount of solid glass on top of it. That bubble's coming out to the end a little too much, so I'm going to go in and just pinch it closed. Now I do basically the same thing I did with the bottom of the stem and the top of the foot. I get my little gather there on the end, and really I'm only working on that little gather on the end so I don't make that bubble that from the hollow part come out into it. I get only that little gather on the end warm and push it back with the paddle. Making that diamond shape. And I just blew it out. Close it back up. And it's going to blow back out probably here in a second. Yep. Let it gather back down one more time. It's such a small little hole right there. If I keep that from getting too hot, I can drop my white right on top of it. And then if I work the heat only on the end of the white, I can keep it from blowing back out.
Normally you do it with a holder?
Excuse me?
Normally you work that, or you weld that without a hole?
Yeah, I mean that would be better. What I could do right now is attach another point and let it gather down and pull that off again, or put the white on. I think the hole is small enough on here that I can get enough white on top that it'll make a clean weld but won't be able to blow through. Maybe we'll go through both ways of working. We'll see. It might blow through. But I put it on with clear, hot, but not soupy. And the white, pretty soupy. Put it on there. Marble it into shape. So I worked the heat only on the white there. So the heat radiating out from the white was part of the element that made the clear hot enough for it to all weld. There's other half of the boleo, the other quarter of the boleo. Half at the bottom. Going to pull the end off of that just a little bit, taper it out a little bit so it's a little bit has a little bit smoother of a transition for the next bubble. Or, excuse me, the next little gather from the oil. Okay, so there I've got cup and, or excuse me, stem and foot. Now we'll make cup. Now when working with thinner wall too, it's a little bit of a trick actually pulling points at first, because you have to heat up a wider area of glass to pull it and still get something that has a thick enough gauge to really work it, to hold on to it. So basically with this, I'm going to blow a bubble and then I'm going to pull it back behind it, cut off the point, the same way I did the top of the foot, paddle it into that diamond shape, and then attach it, and make the other part of the avulio, and then attach it to the stem, and then open up the cup after it's attached. That's why I wanted to make sure to give myself a decent amount here on the stem. I mean, they look cool, having some visual tension with the height of the cups, but there also is a utilitarian purpose for it while making it. I do like working with my blow hose. It makes my life easier. Some people hate them. I've got pretty accustomed to mine. Work on making sure that my point is straight up here. That's for the sake of showing you the different ways. On this cup, I'm going to take it off with the diamond shears, take the stem off with the diamond shears, and put the lip wrap on very small, rather than doing a trash bowl. And I choose that partially because the shoulder of this cup is pretty clean, a little bit cleaner than the shoulder was on the foot bubble, the shoulder that became the lip. Here, I get the body of this bubble hot, this cup. Pull it out a little bit. I realized a little while back with goblets that they're difficult enough without making them more difficult. Sometimes and that's the idea behind this piece. Sometimes the less you do to them, if you do it cleanly and build on the fact that everything in it was basically just a bubble. You just put the different bubbles together and do them cleanly, you can come up with a really neat end result without working too hard. I mean, it's not about being lazy, but it is about being as efficient as you can with the process. Coming from a pipe background myself, I know that it's really easy to want to overcomplicate the process. So I just gather that all the way closed. Paddle that arrow there, that Maria shape there. That action has become a pretty key element in the way I put my pieces together. Because what it does is it takes a bubble that you do your best to get completely on center and then brings it all the way down to that axis that you use to center it up. And you build your evolio off of that nub. So it's not like you've got a bubble that then you have to hit center and build off of. You've got a natural guide both in the form, the contour on the inside wall of the glass and the heat. And you've got a nice wide area then for your evolio. The bigger of a footprint that you can leave in that connection point, the stronger your goblet's going to be. But from that point, you can draw it down to a much narrower shape to still really give that really elegant and delicate look.
You want to kill us?
Put my gather on with the top of my evolio, pull it off. Okay, back to that paddling shape. Make sure that I get this into a nice clean shape. I want that second gather to be nice and on center. A little bit more defined. Really got to do my best to keep the heat out of the clear on the stem. Especially with that bubble coming as close to the surface as it does, I didn't get that evolio, that white to clear connection maybe quite as strong as I wanted. So if I put too much heat back in it, it might crack. So that's why I'm staying with the heat mainly on the top. If you lose your definition, then roll it in the V. Or a regular blade or an L marver. That going back and crisping up the shape a little bit can help a lot. If you do it too much though, you'll put some scuzz on your glass and make it devitrify or just kind of show a funky scuzzy spot. Like that kind of white scuzz. That's not really quite V-vit, but I don't know, that's like a little bit of foamy bubble stuff on it because you messed the surface up with the metal. You guys know what I'm talking about? That look. So when you go back and define it, don't overdo it. Now you can see here that the Evolio is not entirely on center. Well, that's okay because the middle of the Evolio really helps everything to line up. So even though it looks a little bit wobbly right now, I want to make sure that it's on axis up here. When it's sitting on the table, you know, I would like it to be totally super clean, but it'll be good enough, and the only other people that'll spit it will be you guys. And I don't say that to be dismissive of the need to really get it as clean as you can, but you always got to go with what you got. Because repetition is the only thing that will make it better and clean. Well, now go in, heat slowly up in here in the top. I'm aiming the heat basically in the middle of this ball there. The heat grading from there down is what I want to have to go in and cut it with my shears. Right behind that. I left a little more on there than what I wanted, so I'm still going to trim it. Open it up just a little bit and let that funky bead down, and then the heat from the shears rides right in behind it. Now, you can see here where it still lips out just a little bit. Well, to make sure that everything's even, that all the heat's going to be in there evenly, that it's going to open up evenly, I'm going to roll that little bit of a lip in. And then I'm going to go in with my jacks and lift it out a little bit. I'm going to go in at the angle of the shoulder, at the angle the shoulder rolls down, so it'll be very abrupt angle. The hole's small enough that I'll only go in with one jack blade to start, and I'll lift out. It's not really a prying motion, it's just a lifting motion, and I only put the jacks in as far as I want it, as far as I need to lift it out. I don't try to stick them all the way in the back. It's a general lifting motion. And I'm only going to lift it out a little bit. Now with both blades. Now, paddle that lip flat a little bit. Okay. That's my setup for the lip ring. It's a decent setup. Having that bubble come back out and having the abrupt shoulder shape there gives me a base shape for heat to flare it out, and also a good base shape to put the lip wrap on. Now with this, the rod is a good bit smaller, so basically I'm going to work on the very edge of the flame to put this on. If I go directly in the flame, I'll just smear it all to hell. Not really put it on very evenly. So it's basically the radiant heat in this rod of white. Allowing me to lay it on. It got a little bit narrower there, so I'm going to go back in and fill that in just a little bit. And then I'm going to go back and trim that whole part since it filled in kind of thing. Now once again, I'm going to roll it in just a little bit. That's going to give me an idea also of how even the lip wrap is right now. So if I need to, which I do in this case, maybe, I can go back in and maybe dab a little bit on there if I need to. Not ideal, but it's really important because round and even will open up evenly. If it's uneven, well then your end result will be at least a little bit uneven. I will try to clean it up a little bit. I'm going to trim that again. Okay, now only heating on the lip. Work it out. Let's see now. That's a little more even. Okay, so now it's a little bit more even. Paddle it flat. Begin to heat behind it. I'm going to go in with my jacks again. Lift at the angle of the shoulder. I go in a little bit further this time because I want to lift out a little bit farther. Now at this point I can take a look at it and say, I need to paddle it flat just a little bit. Roll the lip in just a little bit. I found that, especially with the lip wrap, if you know it's coming out a little bit uneven, walk your bubble out, walk your opening out slowly so you can really control what's going on. You got an opportunity to say, okay, that's good enough, I'm going to stop there. Use my parchofis now, basically graphite jacks. On the outside, roll in to that bubble, just a little bit, roll that hump out of it. Starting back here where it's solid and on center. Out a little bit more. I really like my octagonal reamer for this shape because I can go in all the way to the back of the cup and guide it out. Now if it were going to be any other kind of cup shape, I'd stay just with my jacks or my parchofis on. Okay, now Now a little bit of heat on the inside, just like with the foot. Back to the parchofis. Now with the clear, you got some tool lines, tool marks in it when you do it like this. You can do it all in the heat, just like I did with the foot, how I spun the foot out. But for this demo, doing it a little bit more controlled, getting used to the space and everything, it's just a little bit easier to tool it out. So, yeah.
Very nice.
Any questions? Comments, concerns, critiques, criticisms? I know I was a little spacey in the beginning of the demo. Sorry. Had that safety break and got a little spacey. I'll make sure that I well explain everything throughout the course of the 4 days. As much as if you guys got any questions or anything's not quite clear at any point, just ask me to babble on a little more.
I got one. What's the benefit of using the parchofis opposed to just using the jacks all the way through the...
The parchofis can take heat because, well, they're graphite, so you can stay in it a little bit longer.
Right.
And they're rounded out. So on the end and obviously on the side too, so they don't really leave the same kind of tool mark that the jacks do. And you can just keep them in there a lot longer. You don't have nearly the resistance because, you know, the wax burns off and then it starts getting
And the metal too, you can't really keep the metal jacks in the flame.
No, the jacks always ride on the outside of the flame, generally on the top. Because it's always a lifting motion. I know some people with the soft glass bench do a downward motion with it, but gosh, see there you're working against gravity. You're working with gravity to destroy your piece. By lifting, you're balancing out gravity. You always spin at the rate that the glass wants to fall, and then, so which sometimes means not very fast at all. Just slow, even rotations. But then with the jacks, it's a lifting motion as the glass wants to fall. So it balances out. And once again, the most important thing, and I'll probably say it a billion times, the most important thing when using the jacks is opening up at the angle of the shoulder. Because since it is a lifting out motion, that motion is what's going to get you the maximum results, the lifting out at this angle. And then as that opens up a little bit, then maybe you go in a little bit further. And then it opens up a little bit more so you can go in a little bit further. Or then use the jacks on the outside, or the parchofis, and push this little hump in a little bit. So then you can go in and lift out a little bit more. I mean, you can walk that line on the outside of the glass and on the inside of the glass. Do you guys want to work now? You want to try that, or do you want me to demo some more? What I could do, I mean, if you guys wanted, is I could do a stick stack right away, demo a stick stack, and then that gives me a foot that I could use to finish this piece. And I don't know, then after I do the stick stack, you guys can work. I mean, I'm flexible. I don't know how much you guys are here to see me work, or how much you're here to see a style of piece or a technique or a process, and then go through it on your own. And a general consensus is always...
What do you do that now? I'm going to try and make one of those right now.
Okay.
Either way.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. Show people.
Okay.
Glass demo, work demo. Sweet.
Cool. Yeah, it's good. 2 lines in it for you.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Like I said, I definitely want to be flexible and give you guys the opportunity to cover what you need. And if you think about it, I mean, there are some stresses in this piece, but the whole idea is, I blew a bubble, I put a gather on it, melted it in, and then did a butt seal. It's almost like putting two rods together. There's not like a butt that's really gonna be in here to make this piece break. Except for maybe around the foot or in the top. The worst spot would be the top of this bubble. So if you work cleanly through it, flame anneal at best, and then put it in a cold kiln and bring it up from there.
That's what you do?
Yes.
Oh, what do you normally, like, I don't know, a piece like this is delicate as it is, what do you recommend?
Well, I bring it up to what's supposed to be 1050, but I take it up to 1025, and that's still too hot on some pieces that have a lot of weight, and hold it there for 5 minutes, and then bring it down to 700 over 3 hours.
Well, you just reach a piece for just a second, then lower it some.
Yeah, I mean for 5 minutes. Well, I mean, because I know at 1025, I'm still above annealing temperature, that I probably am in the annealing zone for 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
Is that how you do all your pieces, or do you have different annealing processes?
Most all pieces, because they're about the same. And even with the figure and stuff, because Moro's yeah, I mean, you can make sure that everything gets to 1025, I mean, and I'd say no more than 10-15 minutes of holding it there with most things. And as long as you bring it down from there. But I don't know.
You bring it all the way down, or do you just start?
I take it down to, I let my controller ramp from annealing to 700 over 3 hours. And then it shuts off and comes down.